I didn't discover my parents had sold my car through a confession. I learned about it when a toll authority mailed a final notice for a vehicle I hadn't driven in 2 years. Then, my insurance agent called about a hit and run. At the DMV, the clerk pointed to her screen and delivered the chilling news that the title was never transferred. My parents had quietly pocketed $9,500 and left me holding a legal hand grenade. My name is Penelope James. I am 34 years old, and if you were to ask anyone in Maple Glen, Ohio, to describe me in a single word, they would likely choose reliable. I am the daughter who pays her taxes on time. I am the woman who flosses daily. I am the employee who never takes a sick day unless I am physically unable to stand. I work as a senior analyst at Halcyon Risk and Compliance, a firm that occupies the gray air-conditioned middle ground between corporate law and forensic accounting. My job, in essence, is to look at piles of paperwork that appear perfectly normal to the untrained eye and find the single, hairline fracture that suggests a lie. I spend my days hunting for inconsistencies in insurance claims and corporate audits. I am paid to be suspicious. I am paid to notice when the dates do not line up, or when a signature looks just a little too practiced. Yet, despite this professional training, despite the decade I have spent dissecting the deceit of strangers, I miss the fraud happening in my own driveway. It is a peculiar blindness that afflicts those of us who play the role of the good child. We are so accustomed to smoothing over the rough edges of our families that we stop seeing the sharp objects they are holding until we are already bleeding. For the past 3 years, since I moved 40 minutes north to the city for the job at Halcyon, my car had been sitting in my parents' driveway. It was a 2011 Honda Accord, painted a sensible, unassuming gray. To anyone else, it was just a depreciating asset, a piece of metal gathering dust and bird droppings under the oak tree. But to me, that Honda was a trophy. I had bought it cash in hand with the savings from my first 2 years of working retail after college. It was the first thing I ever owned that my father, Gary, had not co-signed for. It was the first thing my mother, Lynn, could not hold over my head. I kept the title in a fireproof box in my apartment, but I left the car in Maple Glen. The city parking fees were exorbitant, nearly $300 a month, and I took the train to work. "Keep it here, Penny," my dad had said, slapping the hood with that jovial, ownership-style affection he displayed toward things that were not actually his. "It helps us out, makes the house look lived in when we go on vacation. Plus, you never know when you might need a backup." It made sense. It was logical, and because I was Penelope, the logical daughter, I agreed. I kept the insurance active. I kept the registration current. I kept the title in my name. I thought I was being responsible. I did not realize I was simply curating the inventory for their future liquidation sale. The crack in the facade appeared on a Thursday afternoon in late October. I was at my desk at Halcyon, cross-referencing a stack of medical billing codes. When my phone buzzed, it was a text from my mother. "Hey, sweetie. Just thinking about you. Hope work isn't too crazy. Are you coming down this weekend?" It was a standard text, the kind of digital breadcrumb meant to test the waters. I typed back that yes, I was planning to drive down on Saturday morning. I barely had time to put the phone down before the follow-up message arrived. The real reason for the contact. Great Brianna is stressing out about the venue deposit. The caterer wants another $2,000 by Monday or we lose the date. Dad and I are a little liquid challenged right now until his commission check clears. Maybe we can talk about it when you come. I stared at the screen. Feeling that familiar, heavy stones settle in my stomach. Brianna, my younger sister, the sparkling, chaotic, golden child of the James family. She was 29, getting married for the first time to a man who sold boat insurance, and treating the event like a coronation. My parents treated me as the steady foundation, the load-bearing wall that you never thanked but relied upon to keep the roof up. Brianna was the decoration. You admired the decoration. You leaned on the wall. I did not reply to the second text immediately. I simply turned my phone over and went back to my spreadsheets. I told myself I would deal with it on Saturday. I told myself I was good at saying no, even though history suggested otherwise. I drove down to Maple Glen on Saturday morning in my current vehicle, a leased compact sedan that was practical for city driving. The drive was a straight shot down the interstate, a 40-minute transition from the gray skyline of the city to the manicured lawns and white picket fences of my childhood. Maple Glen was the kind of place where people mowed their lawns in diagonal stripes and noticed if you left your garbage cans out an hour too long on pickup day. As I pulled into my parents' driveway, the sun was high and bright, casting sharp shadows against the vinyl siding of the house. I parked behind my father's truck and stepped out, instinctively looking toward the side of the garage where my Honda usually sat. It was empty. There was a rectangle of lighter pavement where the car had shielded the asphalt from the sun and rain. A ghostly footprint of the vehicle. A few dry leaves skittered across the empty space. I frowned, shielding my eyes. My first thought was not theft. My first thought was that my father had moved it to mow the lawn, or perhaps to work on his own truck. I walked into the house through the side door, the smell of lemon polish and potpourri hitting me instantly. It was the smell of my mother's domain clean, controlled, and suffocating. "Penny, you're here." My mother appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a floral dish towel. She looked tired but put together. Her hair sprayed into a helmet of blonde perfection. She hugged me, a quick, airy squeeze that focused more on not wrinkling her blouse than on affection. "Did you hit traffic? You look pale. Are you eating enough?" "I'm fine, Mom," I said, the automatic response slipping out before I could stop it. "I'm eating. I'm fine." My father walked in from the living room, holding a half-empty mug of coffee. "There she is, the corporate tycoon," he grinned, but his eyes didn't quite meet mine. He looked past me, toward the driveway. "Where's the Accord?" I asked. I tried to keep my voice casual, slipping off my shoes. I saw the spot was empty. The air in the kitchen seemed to stutter for a fraction of a second. It was the kind of micropause I looked for in depositions. The tiny hitch in breathing that happens when a brain has to construct a reality rather than recall one. "Oh, that," my dad said, waving his hand dismissively. "I took it down to the detail shop on 4th Street, the one near the old cinema. The birds had done a number on the hood, and I didn't want the paint to etch. Figured I'd get it washed and waxed for you. Keep it nice." "You took it for a detail?" I asked. "Dad, you didn't have to do that. It just sits there." "Well, we can't have it looking like a junker. Can we?" my mother chimed in, her voice pitched slightly higher than usual. "The neighbors talk, you know. Plus, with the wedding guests coming in a few months, we want everything looking sharp." "When is it coming back?" I asked. "Monday or Tuesday," my dad said, taking a sip of his coffee. "They're backed up. No big deal. You weren't planning on driving it this weekend. Were you?" "No," I said slowly. "I wasn't." I let it go. That was the tragedy of it. I let it go because the explanation, while slightly inconvenient, was plausible. My parents were obsessed with appearances. The idea that my dusty car was an eyesore to the neighbors was exactly the kind of thing that would keep my mother awake at night. And frankly, part of me wanted to believe they were doing something nice for me, taking care of my property without being asked. The rest of the weekend was a masterclass in deflection. We talked about Brianna's wedding. We talked about the floral arrangements, which had gone over budget by 15%. We talked about the rising cost of prime rib. We talked about everything except me, and certainly not about the empty spot in the driveway. Whenever the conversation lulled, my mother would circle back to the $2,000 needed for the caterer. "It's just a bridge loan, Penny," she said over dinner on Saturday, pushing peas around her plate. "Just until Dad's bonus hits. You know we're good for it." "I really can't right now," I lied. "I could. I had the money, but I was tired of being the bank. My rent just went up." "Oh," my mother said, her face falling into a mask of tragic disappointment. "Well, we'll figure it out. We always do. Maybe Brianna can just cut back on the flowers." The guilt trip was subtle, designed to make me feel like I was personally snatching the bouquet out of my sister's hands. I drove back to the city on Sunday evening feeling drained, hollowed out by the passive aggression. As I backed out of the driveway, I glanced one last time at the empty spot where my Honda should have been. A vague unease pricked at the back of my neck, but I turned up the radio and drove away. I was the daughter who was always fine. I didn't make scenes. Monday morning arrived with the gray, relentless drizzle typical of late autumn in Ohio. I was back at my desk at Halcyon by 8 o'clock, grateful for the silence of my office. The weekend had left me with a tension headache that throbbed behind my eyes. I dove into my work, letting the predictable logic of numbers soothe me. At 11 o'clock, the receptionist, a young woman named Sarah, dropped a stack of mail on my desk. "Just the usual junk," she said cheerfully, "and something that looks serious." I sorted through the pile, a credit card offer, a flyer for a pizza place, and then, at the bottom, a stark white envelope with a window. The return address was from the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission. I frowned. I hadn't been to Pennsylvania in 6 months. I slid my letter opener under the flap and unfolded the document. The header was printed in bold. Red letters, "Final notice of toll violation." My eyes scanned the page, my brain trying to reconcile the data with my reality. The notice claimed that a vehicle registered to me had passed through a toll plaza near Pittsburgh 3 weeks ago. The amount due was not just the toll, it was the toll, plus a late fee, plus an administrative penalty. The total came to $145. "That's a mistake," I whispered to the empty room. I looked at the grainy black and white photograph printed at the bottom of the page. It was a license plate capture. I knew that plate number by heart. I had memorized it 10 years ago when I screwed the metal rectangle onto the bumper of my new car. It was my Honda Accord. I leaned closer to the paper, my heart beginning to hammer a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The date stamp on the photo was October 4th. That was over 3 weeks ago. My father had told me on Saturday that the car was at the detail shop. He had implied he just dropped it off. But if this photo was real, my car had been in Pennsylvania nearly a month ago. Then, another detail caught my eye. A small box in the upper right corner of the letter, where the recipient's information was listed. Penelope James P.O., Box 492, Maple Glen, OH 4302. The blood drained from my face. That was not my address. I lived in the city. My driver's license had my city apartment address. My vehicle registration had my city apartment address. The only reason I was holding this letter now was that the United States Postal Service's forwarding system had finally caught up with the misdirection. Or perhaps the toll authority had run a skip trace when the first notices bounced. This was a final notice. That meant there had been a first notice and a second notice. I had never received them. Why? Because someone had changed the mailing address for the vehicle. Someone had deliberately diverted the mail to a P.O. box in Maple Glen. I sat back in my ergonomic chair, the expensive leather creaking under my shifting weight. The office was quiet, the hum of the ventilation system the only sound, but in my ears, there was a rushing noise like water. My car wasn't at a detail shop. My car wasn't sitting in the driveway. My car was driving on toll roads in Pennsylvania, and someone had gone to the trouble of changing the address on the registration or the toll account so that I wouldn't find out. I thought of my father's casual wave. I took it down to the detail shop. I thought of my mother's concern about the neighbors. We can't have it looking like a junker. A cold, hard knot of realization formed in my chest, displacing the air in my lungs. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't my parents borrowing the car for an errand. You don't change a mailing address for an errand. You change a mailing address when you want to hide something. I reached for my phone, my fingers trembling slightly. I needed to call the toll authority. I needed to understand how the address had been changed. But before I could dial, my desk phone rang. The harsh digital trill made me jump. I looked at the caller ID. It was my insurance agent, a man named Robert who sent me a calendar every December. I picked up the receiver, my hand gripping the plastic so hard my knuckles turned white. "This is Penelope," I said, my voice sounding strange and distant to my own ears. "Ms. James? Hi, this is Robert from State Farm," he said, his voice brisk and professional. "I'm calling because we just received an incident report regarding your 2011 Honda Accord. I tried your cell, but it went to voicemail earlier." An incident report, I repeated. Yes, ma'am. We received a notification of a collision involving your vehicle yesterday afternoon. The other party claims your vehicle fled the scene, but they got the plate number. We need to get your statement. I looked down at the final notice on my desk. The photo of my car mocked me. Robert, I said, and I was proud that my voice did not shake. I need you to tell me exactly where this accident happened. It was in Columbus, he said, near the University District. Columbus, 2 hours from Maple Glen, 3 hours from where I sat. I wasn't driving the car. Robert, I said, I haven't driven that car in 2 years. Okay, Robert said, his tone shifting from professional to wary. Is the car currently in your possession? I thought it was, I said. But it seems I was wrong. I hung up the phone. I didn't call my parents. Not yet. If I called them now, they would lie. They would spin and deflect and talk about Brianna's wedding and my father's blood pressure. They would gaslight me until I apologized for asking. No, I worked in compliance. I worked in fraud detection. You do not confront the suspect until you have the paper trail. I grabbed my purse and stood up. I walked out of my office, past the receptionist. I'm taking an early lunch, Sarah, I said. Okay, Penny, everything all right? I have to go to the DMV, I said. There's an error with some paperwork. I walked out into the rain. I needed to see the title record. I needed to see whose name was on that car. Because in my heart, I knew the car was gone, but I needed to know if my family had just stolen my property, or if they had stolen my identity to do it. The final notice was folded inside my purse, burning like a hot coal against my side. I wasn't the good daughter anymore. I was the investigator, and the investigation had just begun. The rain outside the DMV in Cedar County was relentless, a gray curtain that matched the gnawing dread in my stomach. I sat in my rental car for a moment, the engine idling, staring at the drab brick building that housed the bureaucracy of vehicle ownership. My phone felt heavy in my hand, a repository of mounting evidence that was slowly dismantling the reality of my family life. Before driving here, I had spent 20 minutes in the Halcyon parking lot, turning my car into a mobile command center. The first step was verifying my own alibi. It felt absurd to alibi myself for my own car, but the investigator in me demanded precision. I pulled up the photo from the toll notice again. October 4th, 2:14 p.m. I opened my work calendar app. October 4th, 1:00 p.m. to 3:00 p.m. Quarterly compliance review with senior partners. I checked my sent emails. At 2:18 p.m. on that day, I had sent a summary of the meeting minutes to my boss. I was physically sitting in a glass-walled conference room in the city, 60 miles away from the Pennsylvania Turnpike, while my Honda was supposedly cruising through a toll booth. Click, screenshot saved to a new folder on my phone simply labeled The Honda. Next, I had called the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission. The hold music was a tinny, distorted classical loop that shredded my nerves. When a human finally answered a woman named Brenda, who sounded like she had been answering the same question for 30 years, I skipped the pleasantries. I have a violation notice, I said, reciting the reference number. I need to know when the address on this account was updated. I heard the clacking of a keyboard. That address was updated on September 15th, Brenda said. Online portal request. And what email is associated with the account? We can't give out full details for security, she said, reciting the script. Just the domain, I pressed. Is it a Gmail account? Does it start with an L? It's a Yahoo account, she said, her voice softening slightly, perhaps sensing the edge in mine. Starts with LYNN. My mother, Lynn James, she still used the same Yahoo email address she had created in 2005. The verification code would have gone to her phone. She had logged in, pretending to be me, and diverted the mail to a P.O. box she controlled. This wasn't an accident. It was administrative premeditation. Now, standing inside the DMV, I clutched a numbered ticket A42 sweating in my raincoat. The room smelled of wet wool and floor wax. When my number finally flashed on the red LED board, I walked to window 4. The clerk was a woman with severe glasses and an expression that suggested she had seen every scam in the book. Her name tag read, Dolores. "Help you?" she asked, not looking up. "I need to check the status of a title," I said, sliding my driver's license under the plexiglass. "It's a 2011 Honda Accord, VIN ending in 4922. Dolores took the ID, typed in the number, and frowned at her screen. She squinted, tapped a few more keys, and then looked at me for the first time. "You're Penelope James." "Yes." She turned the monitor slightly, though not enough for me to see clearly. "Honey, the title is still in your name, but the system has a flag on it." "What kind of flag?" "Pending transfer," she said. "Someone tried to push a transfer through about 10 days ago, but it got kicked back." "Why, incomplete bill of sale," Dolores said, popping her gum. "And the signature on the release form didn't match the one we have on file from your last renewal. It got flagged for manual review." My knees felt weak. I gripped the counter. "Can I see it? Can I see what was submitted?" "I can't give you the originals," she said. "But since you're the owner of record, I can print a copy of the rejection notice and the submitted documents." "Please." The printer hummed and spat out 3 pages. Dolores slid them across the counter. I picked them up, my hands trembling. The first page was a standard Ohio bill of sale. The date was written in blue ink, October 1st. The sale price listed was $9,500. My eyes jumped to the seller's signature line. There it was, Penelope James. It was a good attempt, to a stranger. It might have looked passable, but I knew the loops of my own P and J. I knew the pressure I put on the downstrokes. This signature was too round, too bubbly. It was the handwriting of someone who dotted her I's with circles when she was in a good mood. It was my mother's handwriting, trying to be mine. I looked at the buyer section. The name was scrawled illegibly, something that looked like J. Pike or J. Parks. The address listed for the buyer wasn't a home. It was a generic strip mall address in a neighboring county. "The notary stamp is missing, too," Dolores pointed out, tapping the paper. "That's why it stalled. Whoever did this tried to do a gift transfer first to avoid taxes, then crossed it out and wrote the sale price. It's a mess." "So, legally," I said, my voice steadying as the investigator mode took over, "I still own this car, right now, today." "According to the state of Ohio," Dolores said, "you are fully liable for that vehicle." "Thank you," I said. "You have no idea how helpful you've been." I walked out of the DMV into the rain, the paperwork shielded inside my coat. I got back into my rental car and sat there, listening to the drumming on the roof. I had the final notice from the turnpike. I had the phone call from the insurance agent about the hit and run. And now, I had a fraudulent bill of sale with a forged signature. My parents had sold my car for $9,500. They had taken the cash, and because they were too cheap or too incompetent to pay for a notary or handle the taxes correctly, they had botched the transfer. They had handed the keys to a stranger, this J. Pike, and sent him on his way with my license plates still on the car. And now that stranger was racking up tolls and crashing into people. I needed to hear it. I needed to hear them deny it one more time before I dropped the hammer. I dialed my mother's number. It rang 4 times before she picked up. The background noise was chaotic voices, laughter, the rustle of fabric. "Penny, hi." She sounded breathless. "I can't really talk right now. We're at the bridal shop. Brianna is having a crisis about the veil length." "Mom," I said, "where is my car?" "I told you," she said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming hushed. "Dad took it to the detailer. Why are you obsessing over this?" "I'm at the DMV," I said. Silence. The background noise seemed to fade away as she likely pressed the phone tighter to her ear. "Why are you at the DMV?" she asked, her voice sharp. "Because I got a toll violation from Pennsylvania," I said, "and an accident report from Columbus, and I'm looking at a bill of sale right now, Mom. It says the car was sold for $9,500. It has my name signed at the bottom. Penny, Honestly, she hissed, you are being so dramatic. We are in the middle of a fitting. Can't this wait? No, I said. It can't wait. Who is J. Pike? I don't know what you're talking about. She lied. It was a bad lie. I could hear the tremor in it. Look, Dad handled it. I have to go. Brianna is crying. Mom, don't you dare hang. Click. She hung up on me. She hung up on me while I was holding evidence of a felony she had likely committed. I stared at the phone, rage boiling in my veins. But before I could redial, a text message popped up. It wasn't from my mother. It was from my father, Gary James. Stop harassing your mother. The car is with a friend of mine. It's safe. We needed to borrow against it for the wedding deposits. I'll explain everything later. Just calm down. Borrow against it, I said aloud. You don't borrow against a car by signing a bill of sale and handing over the keys. You borrow against a car by getting a title loan, which requires the owner to be present. Friend of mine. That was the phrase that stuck. My father didn't have friends who bought cars for cash and drove them to Pennsylvania. My father had drinking buddies and golf acquaintances. He was gaslighting me via text message. He was trying to rewrite the reality of the documents I held in my hand. I looked at the text again. I'll explain everything later. That was the family motto. Later, later, when the anger had faded. Later, when they could guilt me into accepting it. Later, when the damage was already done. But there would be no later. My phone buzzed again. An email notification. I opened it. It was an automated alert from the Ohio Bureau of Motor Vehicles, triggered by my visit to the window. Subject title alert. Transfer pending. Action required. Dear Penelope James, a transfer request for your vehicle. 2011. Honda Accord is currently in pending status due to discrepancies in the submitted documentation. Please contact the title office immediately to verify the sale. The system was catching up. The loop was closing. I took a deep breath. I didn't text my father back. I didn't call my mother again. I started the engine of my rental car. They thought this was a family dispute. They thought this was something we would argue about over Sunday dinner, where I would eventually sigh and say, "It's okay," and let them keep the money because Brianna needed her dream wedding. They thought I was still Penelope, the reliable one, the doormat. They didn't realize that by forging my signature, they had stopped being my parents and started being suspects. I put the car in gear. I wasn't going back to work. I was going to Maple Glen. But I wasn't going as a daughter. I was going as the owner of a stolen vehicle that was currently a liability risk to my entire financial future. I drove out of the DMV lot, the wipers slashing back and forth like a metronome, counting down the minutes until my arrival. The paper trail was established. The lies were documented. Now, it was time for the confrontation. The drive from the Cedar County DMV to my parents' house in Maple Glen took 45 minutes. I did not listen to the radio. I did not call my best friend to vent. I sat in silence, listening to the hum of the rental car's engine and the rhythmic slap of the windshield wipers. My heart rate, which had spiked dangerously high while standing at the counter with Dolores, had now slowed to a heavy, deliberate thud. I felt a strange sense of detachment settling over me, a cold clarity that I usually only experienced when staring at a spreadsheet full of embezzled funds. When I pulled into the driveway, the rain had softened to a mist. The house looked infuriatingly warm. Golden light spilled from the living room windows, casting long rectangles onto the wet lawn. Through the sheer curtains, I could see the silhouette of my father's recliner and the back of my mother's head on the sofa. They were watching television. They were likely digesting dinner. They were living their lives with the comfortable ease of people who had $9,500 of found money sitting in their bank account. I parked the rental right in the center of the driveway, blocking my father's truck. I grabbed my purse, checking one last time to make sure the folded documents from the DMV and the toll violation were accessible. I walked to the side door, the one we always used, and let myself in. The air inside was thick with the smell of garlic bread and pasta sauce. The television was blaring a game show. the audience clapping manically. "Penny," my mother's voice floated from the living room. It was casual, light, completely at odds with the fact that she had hung up on me less than an hour ago. "Is that you? We saved you some lasagna." I walked into the living room. My father was leaned back in his lazy boy, a toothpick working at the corner of his mouth. My mother was on the sofa, a glass of white wine in her hand, flipping through a bridal magazine. It was a tableau of domestic peace that made my stomach churn. "We need to talk," I said. I didn't shout. My voice was low, flat, and devoid of the deference I usually offered them. My father sighed, a long, theatrical exhalation of air through his nose. He didn't look away from the TV. "If this is about the car again, Penelope, can we not do this tonight? I had a long day at the lot." "It is about the car," I said, "and we are doing this tonight." I walked over to the television and pressed the power button on the side of the unit. The room plunged into silence. "Hey," my father barked, finally looking at me. I was watching that. "You sold my car," I said. It wasn't a question. My mother set her wine glass down on a coaster with a sharp clink. She looked at me with wide, innocent eyes, the kind of expression a toddler makes when caught with a marker in their hand. "We didn't sell it, exactly," she began, smoothing her skirt. "We just moved it along." "I have a bill of sale," I said, holding up the paper Dolores had printed for me. "It says you sold it for $9,500 on October 1st. It has my name signed at the bottom, but I wasn't here on October 1st. I was in Chicago for a conference." My mother waved a hand dismissively. "Oh, stop being so technical. Someone asked to buy it. A friend of a friend. He saw it sitting in the driveway and made an offer. We couldn't just let that kind of money walk away." "Who gave you permission?" I asked. "It is my car. My name is on the title. I paid for it. It was sitting here." My mother cried out, her voice rising to that pitch of defensive victimhood I knew so well. "It was gathering dust. Penelope leaves were piling up on it. I thought you didn't need it anymore. You have that fancy job in the city. You take the train. We thought we were doing you a favor by getting rid of the clutter." "A favor," I repeated. "You sold my property and kept the money. That is not a favor. That is theft." "Watch your mouth," my father snapped. He sat up, the footrest of his recliner slamming down. "Don't you dare accuse your parents of theft. We raised you. We put a roof over your head." "And that gives you the right to forge my signature?" I asked, looking him dead in the eye. "You're being incredibly selfish," my father said, shaking his head as if he were disappointed in my moral character. "You know Brianna has been struggling with these deposits. The wedding industry is a racket. Penny, they want money for everything. We were short. We saw an opportunity to help your sister. We figured you, of all people, would understand family supporting family." The audacity of it was breathtaking. He was twisting the narrative so fast that if I hadn't been trained to spot logical fallacies, I might have felt guilty. He was making me the villain for wanting my own car back. "So the $9,500 went to the wedding?" I asked. "Most of it," my mother said quickly. "And we paid off a few household things. The water heater was acting up." "And why is the title still in my name?" I asked. "If you sold it, why is it still legally mine?" My father scoffed. "The buyer, Mr. Pike, he's a dealer or something. He said he has a guy who handles the paperwork. He said not to worry about it, that he'd take care of the transfer fees so we didn't have to paying anything extra. It was a good deal." "He said he'd handle it," I repeated, letting the stupidity of the statement hang in the air. "Dad, you handed over the keys and the car without transferring the title at a notary. You just let him drive away." "He paid cash," my father said, as if cash negated the laws of the state of Ohio. "He's a stand-up guy, a friend of Jerry's." "Who is Jerry?" "A guy I know from the hardware store," my father said vaguely. At that moment, the hallway door opened and Brianna walked in. She was wearing a silk robe that said "Bride in Rhinestone" letters on the back. She was eating a yogurt cup, looking from me to our parents with a bored expression. Why is everyone yelling? She asked, licking the spoon. I can hear you guys all the way upstairs. I'm trying to do my seating chart. Your sister is having a meltdown because we sold the Honda to help with your catering, my mother said, casting a pleading look at Brianna. Tell her it's okay, Bree. Brianna rolled her eyes. She looked at me with a mix of pity and annoyance. Seriously? Penny. You're making a scene over that old thing. You barely drove it. It smelled like mildew anyway. It's not about the smell, Brianna, I said. It's about the fact that it's illegal, and I didn't know about it. Oh, please. Brianna laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. We talked about it like a week before they did it. Mom said you wouldn't mind because you're always talking about how stressful driving in the city is. I told them to just go for it. I froze. The room seemed to tilt on its axis. You talked about it. I looked at Brianna, then at my parents. You had a discussion, a family meeting. It wasn't a meeting, my father grumbled. We were just chatting at dinner. You discussed selling my car, I said slowly. And you all agreed to do it. And in that entire week, not one of you picked up the phone to ask me, not one text message. We didn't want to bother you, my mother said. You're always so busy with work. We figured we'd just surprise you with how nicely everything worked out for Brianna. Surprise me, I whispered. The betrayal hit me harder than the financial loss. It wasn't just that they wanted the money. It was that they didn't respect me enough to even run a con on me properly. They just assumed my compliance. They assumed I was a non-entity, a resource to be harvested when needed. Listen to me carefully, I said, my voice hardening into steel. I received a toll violation today. The car is being driven in Pennsylvania. I received a call about a hit-and-run accident in Columbus. The car is still in my name. That means if that car kills someone tonight, the police come for me. Not you. Me. My father waved his hand again, a gesture of supreme arrogance. You're overreacting. It's probably just a mix-up with the plates. Pike is a professional. He wouldn't let that happen. If the title is in my name, the legal liability is mine, I said, spacing out the words. Do you understand what liability means, Dad? It means lawsuits. It means wage garnishment. It means criminal charges for leaving the scene of an accident. My father let out a short, derisive laugh. Oh, listen to her. Liability. Garnishment. You think because you work in some boring office you're a lawyer now? You push papers. Penelope, you're a glorified secretary. Stop trying to scare your mother with big words. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had taught me to ride a bike. The man I had spent my whole life trying to impress with good grades and promotions. And I saw him clearly for the first time. He wasn't just irresponsible. He was cruel. He needed me to be small so he could feel big. He needed my job to be a secretary job so that his failure to protect me didn't sting his ego. I investigate fraud for a living, Dad, I said quietly. I don't push paper. I catch people who fake signatures. Well, you aren't going to catch your own parents, Brianna scoffed. God, you're such a buzzkill. Can you just fix it? Just call the guy and tell him to change the plates. Why do you have to make everything so difficult? Yeah, my mother added, her eyes welling up with those weaponized tears. Why do you have to be so hard on us? We did this for your sister. Why can't you just be happy for her? I looked around the room. I saw the familiar wallpaper, the family photos on the mantel mostly of Brianna, and the comfortable, suffocating dysfunction that had defined my 34 years of existence. They were waiting for me to fold. They were waiting for me to apologize for raising my voice, to pull out my checkbook and pay the toll fine, to spend my weekend tracking down Mr. Pike and begging him to fix the title so my dad wouldn't look bad. They were waiting for the old Penelope, but the old Penelope had been left behind at the DMV counter in Cedar County. I'm not fixing it, I said. What? My mother blinked. I'm not fixing your mess, I said. I'm going to fix mine. What does that mean? My father asked, his eyes narrowing. It means, I said, turning toward the door, that you sold a car that didn't belong to you, and now I have to report a theft." "You wouldn't dare," my father growled. He started to stand up, his face reddening. "You call the cops on your own father, and you're done. You hear me? You're out of this family." "I think," I said, opening the side door and letting the cold, wet night air rush in, "that you kicked me out of this family the moment you forged my name." "Penelope," my mother screamed, "don't you walk away. We have to settle this." I walked out. I closed the door firmly behind me. I didn't slam it. Slamming it would have been emotional. Slamming it would have been a daughter's tantrum. Closing it quietly was a business decision. I walked to the rental car, rain peppering my face. My hands were steady as I unlocked the door. I sat in the driver's seat and looked back at the house. I could see shadows moving frantically behind the curtains. They were probably arguing now, blaming me, calling me ungrateful. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I didn't call the police, not yet. Police reports filed by family members against family members were messy. Cops hated them. District attorneys ignored them. They were often dismissed as civil matters. No, I needed something stronger than a domestic dispute report. I needed an undeniable chain of evidence that proved this was a commercial crime involving a third party. I needed to find Jayot Pike. I needed to prove that my parents weren't just bad parents, but that they were participants witting or unwitting in a fraudulent automotive ring. I opened the folder on my phone titled The Honda. I added a new note. Admission of guilt, verbal confirmation from Gary, Lynn, and Brianna James, date October 28th. Time 7:45 p.m., witness self. I put the car in reverse and backed out of the driveway. I didn't look back. I wasn't going home to sleep. I was going to find a hotel with strong Wi-Fi. I had a credit report to pull, a background check to run, and a ghost named Jay Pike to hunt down. The good daughter was dead. The auditor was on the clock. I did not sleep that night. I sat in the sterile, beige armchair of a Hampton Inn room 3 exits down from my parents' house, watching the rain streak the window and refreshing my email inbox every 15 minutes. I had turned my phone on Do Not Disturb, but the notifications were bypassing my emotional firewalls, arriving with the relentless precision of a drone strike. By 7 o'clock on Tuesday morning, the digital footprint of my Honda Accord had expanded. It was no longer just a ghost in Pennsylvania. The E-ZPass system, linked to an account that was technically mine, but controlled by my mother's hijacked email login, sent a fresh digest. The car had crossed state lines again. At 3 in the morning, it had pinged a transponder on the bridge crossing into West Virginia. 2 hours later, it was back in Ohio. Moving west on a secondary highway, the fines were metastasizing. The initial $145 had been joined by 3 new violations: speeding in a construction zone, an unpaid turnpike exit, a failure to stop at a way station check, which was bizarre for a sedan. Implying the driver was confused or erratic, the total outstanding balance was now pushing $400, but the money was not the problem. The velocity was the problem. Whoever Jay Pike was, or whoever he had sold the car to, was driving manic loops across the Rust Belt, and every mile they covered was a fresh liability, tethered directly to my Social Security number. At 8:15, Robert from State Farm called again. This time, his voice lacked the professional courtesy of the day before. He sounded like a man who had just had a very difficult conversation with his underwriting department. "Penelope, I need to be very clear with you," Robert said. "The police report from the Columbus hit and run has been updated. The victim is claiming soft tissue damage and potential whiplash. They are lawyering up." "I told you, Robert," I said, my laptop open in front of me, the screen glowing white in the dim hotel room. I was not driving. I did not give permission for the car to be driven. "That is the issue," Robert said. "Under Ohio law, unless you have filed a theft report, there is a presumption of permissive use. If the keys were not stolen and the car was not hot-wired, the insurance assumes you allowed someone to drive it. If we cannot identify the driver, the liability lands on the policyholder. That is you." "I am filing the report today," I said. "Do it," Robert warned. "Because if this turns into a personal injury lawsuit and we can't subrogate against the driver, They are going to come after your assets, your savings, your current wages. This isn't just about a deductible anymore. I hung up and stared at the wall. My assets, my savings, the $40,000 I had painstakingly scraped together for a down payment on a condo in the city. My parents had sold my car for $9,500 to pay for flowers and prime rib, and in doing so, they had exposed my entire financial existence to a nuclear blast. I needed to find the buyer. I picked up the photocopy of the bill of sale I had obtained from Dolores at the DMV. The handwriting was atrocious, a scrawl of black ink that looked like a seismograph reading during an earthquake, but there was a phone number listed under the buyer's signature. I dialed it. "We're sorry. The number you have reached is not in service or has been disconnected." I tried searching for the number on Spokeo, on Bin Verified, on Google, nothing. It was a burner, a throwaway digit used for Craigslist deals and drug buys. I went to Facebook Marketplace and searched for archived listings in Maple Glen within a 20-mile radius. I looked for 2011 Honda Accord. I looked for gray sedan. I looked for mechanic special. There was nothing. The ad, if there ever was one, had been scrubbed. My parents hadn't sold the car to a legitimate person. They had sold it to a phantom. I closed my eyes and took a breath. Then, I opened the browser tab for the Ohio Bureau of Motor Vehicles. I navigated to the investigation section. I didn't want to do this. Every instinct in my body screamed against it. It felt like a violation of the biological imperative to protect your kin. But then I thought about my father's sneer. "You're just a glorified secretary." I thought about Brianna eating yogurt while dismissing my legal exposure as a buzzkill. I downloaded Form BMW 3705, Affidavit of Vehicle Transfer Fraud. Before I filled it out, I needed one more piece of the puzzle. I called the main number for the Cedar County Title Office, hoping to bypass the front desk and get a supervisor. After 20 minutes of hold music, I got a woman named Mrs. Higgins. "I was in yesterday regarding a suspended transfer on a Honda Accord," I said, keeping my voice clipped and professional. "I have the rejection notice, but I need to know something specific. The clerk mentioned the paperwork was submitted by a representative. Who was that?" "Let me pull the file." Mrs. Higgins said, "I heard the rustle of paper." "Okay, yes, the packet was dropped off by a courier service, but the application lists a power of attorney attached to the title." "A power of attorney," I repeated. "I never signed a power of attorney." "Well, there's a copy of one here," she said. "It's a photocopy, not an original. That's actually one of the reasons we flagged it. It grants authority to a Pike Auto Exchange to handle title work on behalf of the seller. Does it have a notary seal?" "It looks like it, but on a photocopy, it's hard to tell if the seal is raised or stamped. The notary listed is—" She paused, squinting at the document. "It's illegible. The stamp is smudged." My blood ran cold. My parents hadn't just forged my name on a bill of sale. They, or this Mr. Pike, had manufactured a power of attorney document, forged my signature on that, and likely fake notarized it to bypass the requirement of me being present. This was no longer just a civil dispute about property. This was forgery of a legal instrument. This was a felony. "Mrs. Higgins," I said, "I need to place a formal freeze on that title. Immediately. That power of attorney is a fabrication. I am the owner, and I'm telling you that vehicle is currently stolen. You'll need to submit the fraud affidavit," she said, her tone shifting from helpful to bureaucratic. "I am filling it out right now." I hung up and started typing. I filled in every field: VIN number, make, model, date of last authorized use. When I got to the section labeled Suspected Unauthorized Seller, I hesitated. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. If I wrote Gary and Lynn James, I was signing their warrant. I typed unknown. Vehicle was removed from premises without owner's consent. Subsequent fraudulent documents were submitted by third-party Pike Auto Exchange. It was the truth, but it was a surgical truth. I was focusing the laser on the dealer. If the investigation led back to my parents, which it inevitably would, that was their problem. I was giving them a chance to claim ignorance, to claim they were duped by Pike. It was the last act of mercy they would get from me. I printed the form using the hotel's business center printer. I signed it in wet blue ink. I scanned it back in and emailed it to the fraud unit. Then, I drove to the nearest post office and mailed the hard copy via certified mail. Return receipt requested. As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed. It was a restricted number. "This is Penelope," I answered. "Ms. James, this is Officer Miller with the Ohio State Highway Patrol. Chillicothe Post." Yes, my heart hammered. Chillicothe. That was south. "We have a flag on our system regarding a gray Honda Accord registered to you. We didn't impound it, but I wanted to follow up. One of our troopers initiated a stop on this vehicle about 4 hours ago on Route 23. You stopped it?" I asked. "Who was driving?" "That's the thing, ma'am." The driver took off. The trooper initiated lights and sirens for a marked lane violation. The vehicle accelerated, took a hard exit onto a county road, and we terminated pursuit due to traffic density. We didn't want to cause a wreck over a traffic ticket. They ran. I felt sick. "Officer, that car is stolen. I am in the process of filing the report right now." "Okay," Miller said, his voice sharpening. "That explains the behavior." The trooper noted that the vehicle had a temporary tag in the rear window that looked handwritten, but he clocked your hard plates on the front before they sped off. That's a mismatch. Listen, if we see it again, we aren't going to be gentle. You need to get that theft report into Leeds immediately so we can treat it as a felony stop. "I understand," I said. "I'm doing it." I sat in the post office parking lot, clutching the steering wheel. My parents had unleashed a criminal event, a high-speed chase. This wasn't just Brianna's wedding money anymore. This was endangering the public. Then, the family assault began. My phone lit up with my mother's face. I ignored it. Then my father's. Ignored. Then Brianna. Then a text from my mother. "The police just called the house looking for you." "Why are they asking about the Honda Penelope? What did you do?" I didn't answer. Another text from Dad. "Pick up the phone. You are blowing this way out of proportion. Pike called me. He says you're trying to freeze the title. You're going to get someone in trouble." I typed a reply, my thumbs hitting the glass screen with force. "I told you last night, if the title is in my name, the liability is mine. The car was involved in a police pursuit this morning. I am not going to jail for your retirement plan." My phone rang instantly. It was my father. I answered this time. "You listen to me," he shouted, foregoing a greeting. "You call the DMV right now and tell them it was a mistake. Tell them you signed the papers and forgot. Pike is freaking out. He says if the cops raid his lot, he's dragging us into it." "Then you better hope he has a good lawyer," I said, my voice shaking but loud. "We are your parents," he screamed. "You are trying to destroy this family over a 9-year-old car Brianna is crying her eyes out. Do you want to ruin her wedding, is that it? Are you that jealous?" "I am not jealous, Dad," I said. "I am terrified. Someone in that car ran from the police today. Do you understand? They fled. If they had hit a kid in a crosswalk, the cops would be knocking on my door with handcuffs, not calling you." "I told you Pike would handle it." "He isn't handling it," I yelled back, losing my cool for the first time. "He is driving my car through 3 states and forging my signature on federal documents, and you helped him. You gave him my VIN. You gave him the keys. We needed the money." The admission hung in the air, naked and ugly. "I know," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. "And because you needed $9,500, I am now cleaning up a crime scene. I am not doing this to hurt you, Dad. I am doing this to keep myself from being pulled down with you. I am cutting the rope." "If you proceed with this fraud report," my father said, his voice low and threatening, "don't bother coming to the wedding. Don't bother coming for Christmas." "If I don't proceed with this report," I said, "I might be spending Christmas in a courtroom." I hung up. I blocked his number. Then I blocked Mom. Then I blocked Brianna. The silence that followed was heavy, but it was safe. 10 minutes later, my email pinged. It wasn't an automated response this time. It was a direct message from a specialized investigator at the Bureau of Motor Vehicles in Columbus. Subject urgent. Investigation case 8829. James Ms. James. We received your digital submission regarding the unauthorized transfer of the 2011 Honda Accord. We have cross-referenced your claim with the rejected title application on file. The discrepancy in the signatures is significant. Furthermore, the notary stamp used on the power of attorney associated with this file has been flagged in 2 other recent cases involving Pike Auto Exchange. This is no longer a simple civil dispute. We have reason to believe this is part of a pattern of identity theft and title washing. We need you to come in for a sworn statement. We cannot freeze the liability completely until we have verified your handwriting in person. Can you be at the Alum Creek Drive Investigation Unit tomorrow at 9 a.m.? I stared at the screen. Identity theft, title washing, pattern of behavior. My parents hadn't just sold a car to a friend. They had walked into a chop shop operation and handed over their daughter's identity for a stack of cash. I hit reply. I will be there. The bomb had exploded. Now, I had to walk through the fire to make sure the shrapnel didn't hit me. The fluorescent lights of the Alum Creek Drive Investigation Unit were humming with a frequency that seemed to vibrate directly against my skull. It was Wednesday morning. I sat in a plastic chair that was bolted to the floor, waiting for Investigator Davison. The room smelled of stale coffee and bureaucratic despair. I had arrived early, fueled by 3 hours of sleep and a level of adrenaline that felt less like energy and more like a low-grade fever. While I waited, I opened my laptop. I wasn't just here to answer questions. I was here to build a fortress. My first stop was the online portal for the Ohio BMV. I had finally managed to reset the password my mother had changed the security question to, "What is the name of your favorite pet?" And the answer was, predictably, Brianna, which wasn't a pet, but certainly felt like the family mascot. I navigated to the Correspondence History tab. There it was. On September 15th, the mailing address for my vehicle registration had been updated. It wasn't just changed to my parents' house, it was changed to P.O. Box 884 in Maple Glen. I opened a new tab and searched for the box number. It was located at a pack-and-ship store in a strip mall 3 miles from my parents' driveway. I picked up my phone and called the store. "Hi," I said, putting on my best frazzled administrative assistant voice. "I'm calling for Mrs. Lynn James. She thinks she might have left her scarf there when she renewed her box rental last month. Box 884. "Let me check," the clerk said, sounding bored. "Nope, no scarf, but she was just here on Monday to check the mail. Want me to leave a note?" "No, that's fine. Just to confirm, the box is under Lynn James." "Yeah, Lynn James, box 884. I hung up. The breath hissed out of my teeth. It wasn't just a diversion, it was a containment strategy. My mother had rented a PEO box specifically to intercept any notices about the car tolls, fines, renewal warnings, so I wouldn't see them coming to my apartment, and so my father wouldn't see them coming to the house. She was the traffic controller for this entire disaster. Next, I pulled my credit report. I monitored my credit religiously, but I usually only looked at the score. This time, I dove into the hard inquiries section. There was a hit from October 2nd, Quick Title Services LLC. I Googled the company. It was a sketchy online outfit that specialized in lost title recovery and mechanics liens. I called the number on their website. A man answered on the second ring, sounding like he was eating lunch. "Quick Title," he mumbled. "Hi," I said, switching to my professional auditor voice. "I'm reviewing a charge on a client's account from October 2nd. Reference number ending in 4922. The VIN matches a Honda Accord." "Yeah. I need to verify what service was requested." "Who are you?" he asked. "Suspicious?" "I'm the compliance officer for the account holder." I lied smoothly. "We're just categorizing expenses." "Hold on," I heard typing. That was a lost title replacement inquiry. Guy called in saying he bought a car, but the seller lost the title before signing it over. Wanted to know if we could generate a duplicate without the original owner present. "And what did you tell him?" I told him we ain't magicians. Unless he has a notarized POA or a court order, we can't touch it. He hung up. Didn't charge him for the service, just the inquiry fee. Do you have a name for the caller? He identified himself as Jared, said he was calling for the seller. I thanked him and hung up. My stomach did a slow, sickening roll. Jared, likely Jared Pike. My parents hadn't just sold the car. They had actively tried to circumvent the legal title process because they knew they couldn't get my signature. They had shopped around for a loophole before settling on forgery. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Brianna. I had blocked her number, but my iPad, connected to the hotel Wi-Fi, was still syncing messages through iMessage. Brianna, seriously, Penny Mom is a wreck. She can't stop crying. Just tell me how much the fines are. I'll Venmo you. You're ruining my bridal week over a few $100. I stared at the screen. Just give you the money and it's done. That was the family philosophy distilled into a single sentence. To Brianna, this was a transaction fee. To her, my identity, my credit score, and my legal standing were commodities that could be bought back with a few swipes on a payment app. She didn't care about the crime. She cared about the inconvenience. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my photo gallery. Last month, when I was visiting, my mother had handed me her phone. Can you fix the font size? She had asked. It's too small. While I was in the settings, a notification had popped up. I had screenshotted it, intending to ask her about it later, but then distracted by work. I had forgotten. I scrolled back through my camera roll. There it was, a screenshot from September 28th. A text thread with a contact saved as Car Guy. Mom, the title is in a safe deposit box. We can't get it until she comes down. But the car is clean. Car Guy. I can move it without the paper if the price is right. But I need to know the VIN is clean. No liens, Mom. No liens. It's paid off. Paperwork won't be an issue. We can handle the signature. We can handle the signature. I felt a cold sweat break out on the back of my neck. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision because someone knocked on the door and offered cash. This was premeditated. This was a negotiation. My mother had explicitly promised a stranger that she could produce a forged signature to facilitate the sale of a vehicle she did not own. Car Guy wasn't a friend. He was a predator, and my parents were his accomplices. The door to the investigation office opened. A tall man with gray stubble and a weary expression walked out. Penelope James. Yes, I said, standing up. I'm Investigator Davison. Come on back. I followed him into a small office that looked more like a closet with a desk. He sat down and opened a file folder. Okay, Ms. James, we have your affidavit. We have the rejected title application. We have the flag from the Highway Patrol regarding the pursuit yesterday. He looked up at me, his eyes sharp. This is a mess. I know, I said. The man attempting to transfer the title is named Jared Pike, runs a place called Pike Auto Exchange. We've been watching him for a while. He likes to buy cars from estate sales or private sellers who want quick cash, then flips them to high-risk drivers people who can't get loans. He does buy here, pay here, with predatory interest. Usually, the paperwork is just sloppy. This time, it looks criminal. He slid a piece of paper across the desk. It was the power of attorney document Mrs. Higgins had mentioned. Is this your signature? He asked. I looked at the squiggly line at the bottom. It looked nothing like my name. It looked like someone had tried to write Penelope with their non-dominant hand while sneezing. No, I said firmly. Absolutely not. Do you know who signed this? I hesitated. This was the cliff edge. If I said, my mother, I was pushing her off. But then I remembered the text message. We can handle the signature. I remembered the P.O. box. I remembered the car running from the police. I suspect, I said, choosing my words with the precision of a surgeon, that the signature was fabricated by the seller to facilitate the transaction with Mr. Pike. I have evidence that my parents, Gary and Lynn James, were in possession of the vehicle and negotiated the sale without my consent. Davison nodded, scribbling notes. And you are willing to testify to that if we go after Pike. He's going to flip on whoever gave him the keys. He's going to say he bought it in good faith from the people at the house. I understand, I said. If Pike flips, your parents could be looking at charges for theft by deception or forgery. Are you prepared for that? I thought about the final notice. I thought about the hit-and-run victim in Columbus who might have spinal damage. I thought about the $40,000 in my savings account that could be wiped out in a civil suit if I didn't establish right here, right now, that I was a victim, not a co-conspirator. I am prepared, I said. Okay, Davison said. He pulled out a fresh form. I need you to sign this statement formally denying the signature on the bill of sale and the power of attorney. Once you do this, we mark the title as stolen fraudulent. The next time a cop sees that car, they aren't writing a ticket. They are drawing weapons. You understand the escalation? I understand. I signed the paper. The ink looked dark and permanent. One more thing, Davison said, leaning back. Pike paid $9,500. Where is that money? My parents have it, I said. They spent some of it. They intend to use the rest for my sister's wedding. Davison let out a dry chuckle. Well, that's going to be a problem, because that money is proceeds from a crime. Technically, it's evidence. He stood up and offered me a hand. We'll be in touch. Keep your phone on. And Ms. James, don't talk to Pike. If he reaches out, record it. But don't engage. I won't, I said. I walked out of the DMV and back to my rental car. The rain had stopped, leaving the sky a bruised purple color. I sat in the driver's seat and opened my laptop again. I created a new folder on my desktop. I named it James, Option List. Inside, I dragged every file I had collected, the toll violations, the insurance voicemail transcript, the photo of the rejected bill of sale, the screenshot of my mother's text to Car Guy, the search result for the PSO box, the credit inquiry from Quick Title, a PDF of the affidavit I had just signed. I looked at the collection. It was a dossier. It was a weapon. I wasn't going to negotiate with them like a daughter anymore. I wasn't going to cry or beg for an apology they were incapable of giving. They wanted to treat this like a business transaction. Fine. I would treat it like a hostile takeover. I pulled up a blank document and typed a header: Demand for restitution and release of liability. I wasn't writing a letter home. I was drafting a settlement agreement. I typed out the terms. Item 1. Immediate return of the full sale amount of $9,500 to be held in escrow until the legal matter is resolved. Item 2. Full reimbursement for all legal fees, toll fines, and impound costs incurred by Penelope James. Item 3. Assigned, notarized admission of guilt from Gary and Lynn James, stating that they acted alone in the sale of the vehicle, to be used solely for my protection against third-party lawsuits. I stared at the cursor blinking at the end of the sentence. This was the nuclear option. If I sent this, I wasn't just fighting back. I was effectively serving my parents with legal papers. My phone buzzed again. A voicemail from my dad. Pick up the phone. Penny. Pike is here at the house. He's furious. He says the title is frozen. He wants his money back or the title. We don't have the full amount anymore. You need to sign the release. Just sign the damn release and we can fix this. Stop being so stubborn. Pike was at their house. The predator was in the living room. I didn't feel fear for them. I felt a cold, hard resolve. They had invited the wolf in because they thought they could sell him my sheepskin. Now that the wolf was hungry, they wanted me to feed myself to him. I saved the document. I closed the laptop. I wasn't going to sign the release. I was going to let the wolf eat, and then I was going to skin the wolf. I put the car in gear. I had a meeting to prepare for, but first, I needed to make sure my own defenses were impenetrable. I drove to a local bank branch, not the one my parents used, and opened a new safety deposit box. I put a flash drive containing the entire James Option List folder inside. If my house burned down, if my laptop was stolen, if my parents tried to guilt me into deleting everything, the truth would still exist in a steel box in a bank vault. The investigation was over. The prosecution was about to begin. At 6:30 in the evening, I sat in the driver's seat of my rental car in the hotel parking lot and sent a single text message to the group chat labeled, "James family, I am coming over. We are going to finish the conversation from last night. Do not invite Mr. Mai." I watched the 3 dots of the typing indicator appear and disappear for a full minute. No one replied. The silence was an answer in itself. They were circling the wagons, getting their stories straight, preparing the emotional artillery they had used to keep me in line for 3 decades. I placed my phone in my purse. Next to it, I placed a thick, manila folder. Inside were the printed copies of every digital footprint I had uncovered in the last 48 hours, the rejected title application from the DMV, the scanned copy of the forged power of attorney, the transcript of the insurance voicemail, the toll logs showing the car's joyride across state lines, and most damning of all, the enlarged screenshot of my mother's text conversation with Car Guy, where she promised she could handle the signature. I was not going there to argue. Arguments imply 2 sides with valid points. I was going there to conduct a deposition. The drive was short. When I walked into the house, the atmosphere was different from the previous night. Yesterday, there had been noise, the TV, the casual arrogance of people who thought they had gotten away with it. Tonight, the house was silent. The television was off. The curtains were drawn tight. My father was sitting at the head of the dining room table, his arms crossed over his chest. My mother was seated to his right, shredding a paper napkin into tiny, snowy piles. Brianna was at the far end, scrolling through her phone with aggressive indifference. Though I noticed her leg bouncing nervously under the table, they looked like a tribunal waiting to sentence me. They didn't realize I was the one holding the gavel. I didn't say hello. I walked to the empty chair opposite my father and placed the manila folder on the polished wood surface. I didn't open it. I just let it sit there, a heavy beige object that seemed to pull the gravity of the room toward it. "You have a lot of nerve," my father started, his voice a low rumble. "After blocking our numbers, after threatening to call the cops on your own blood." "I didn't threaten," I said calmly, taking my seat. "I stated a fact, and I haven't called the police yet. That is why I'm here." "Well, hurry up," Brianna snapped, not looking up from her screen. "I have a tasting in the morning. I don't need this negative energy right now." "I have 2 questions," I said, ignoring my sister. "If you answer them honestly, we can discuss a solution. If you lie to me, I leave, and I go straight to the precinct." "We didn't lie," my mother burst out, her eyes red-rimmed. "We just omitted some details to protect you from the stress." "Question 1, I said, cutting through her sob story. "Where is the money? Specifically, the $9,500 Mr. Pike gave you. Where is it right now?" My father uncrossed his arms and slammed a hand on the table. "It's our money, Penelope. We raised you. We paid for your college housing. We paid for your braces. You think you can audit us?" "Where is it?" I repeated. My voice was flat, devoid of the emotional hooks they were trying to snag. "It's gone," my father said defiantly. "Spent. On what?" "Life," he shouted. "Credit card bills that have been piling up, the water heater, and yes, the venue deposit for your sister. She needed $4,000 to secure the ballroom, or she was going to lose the date. What were we supposed to do? Let her dream wedding collapse because you were hoarding a car you never drive?" "So the money is fully dispersed," I said. "You have no liquidity to buy the car back." "Why would we buy it back?" Brianna scoffed. "It's sold. Get over it." "Okay," I said. "So the money is gone. That brings me to question 2. I leaned forward. I locked eyes with my mother. She flinched, looking away toward the china cabinet. "The title was in my name," I said softly. "The DMV requires the owner's signature to transfer a title. I was not here. I did not sign it." I let the silence stretch. I let it become uncomfortable. I let it become unbearable. "So," I whispered, "who signed my name?" The room seemed to freeze. My mother stopped shredding the napkin. Brianna's thumb stopped scrolling. My father's jaw worked, a muscle feathering in his cheek. This was the pivot point. If they admitted it, they were admitting to a crime. If they denied it, they were insulting my intelligence. "It doesn't matter," my father grunted, waving a hand as if swatting away a fly. It's just paperwork. Penny, it's a formality. Pike said it was fine. He said he had a guy who could smooth it over. Smooth it over, I repeated. Did you sign it, Dad? I might have put a mark on it, he muttered, unable to look at me. I was acting as your agent, implicitly, as your father. You aren't my agent, I said, and you didn't just put a mark on it. You, or someone you authorized, practiced my signature. You tried to make it look like mine. We did it for you, my mother cried out, her voice cracking. So you wouldn't have to come all the way down here just to sign a piece of paper. We were saving you the trip. You were saving me the trip, I said. By committing forgery. The word landed on the table like a dead bird. Oh, stop it, Brianna groaned. You're so dramatic. Forgery. It's not like we forged a check. It's an old car title. Who cares? The state of Ohio cares, I said. I reached for the folder. I opened it slowly. I took out the document from the DMV, the rejected title application, with the bright red stamp. I slid it across the table toward my father. Look at the reason code, I said. It doesn't say clerical error. It says suspicion of fraudulent signature, and this. I slid the second paper across. The printout of the email from the investigator is a notification that the Bureau of Motor Vehicles has opened a case file. They aren't calling it a mistake. Dad, they are calling it a felony. My father picked up the paper. His hands were shaking. He read the email, his face draining of color. He looked at the red stamp. For the first time, the bluster, the arrogance, the I'm the patriarch act faltered. He wasn't looking at a rebellious daughter anymore. He was looking at the machinery of the state, grinding toward him. Did you talk to them? He whispered. I had to, I said. Because you sold the car to a criminal. That car was involved in a high-speed chase yesterday. The police called me. They wanted to know why I ran from a trooper. Oh my God, my mother gasped, covering her mouth. I didn't run, I continued. But the car did, and because the title is still in my name because your forgery was so bad, it got rejected. I am the one they are looking at. Brianna suddenly burst into tears. But they weren't tears of shock or sympathy. This is going to ruin everything, she wailed, throwing her phone on the table. If you get arrested, or if Dad gets in trouble, who is going to walk me down the aisle? People are going to talk. The wedding is in 3 months. Penny, how could you do this to me? I looked at my sister. She was 29 years old, and her only concern about her parents committing a felony and her sister being investigated for a police pursuit was how it would affect the optics of her wedding procession. I didn't do this, Brianna, I said coldly. They did. And frankly, you did too. You knew a week in advance. You took the money for the deposit. You are a beneficiary of the fraud. I didn't sign anything, she shrieked. You just spent the proceeds, I said. In the eyes of the law, that makes you an accessory. Her crying stopped abruptly. She stared at me, her mouth open. The reality of the word accessory pierced through the tulle and lace of her bridal fantasy. Now, I said, turning back to my father, here is the situation. The BMV knows the signature is fake. I have already sworn an affidavit that I didn't sign it. That part is done. I cannot unring that bell. The investigation into the dealership is happening no matter what. So you sold us out, my father spat, though his voice lacked heat. He sounded defeated. I protected myself, I corrected. But the investigation into who provided the car that is still open, I haven't given them your names yet. I listed the seller as unknown in my initial report. Hope flickered in my mother's eyes. You did. Yes, but they are going to ask, and Mr. Pike, when the investigators squeeze him, he isn't going to go to jail for you. He is going to show them the texts. I pulled out the last piece of paper, the screenshot of my mother's text. We can handle the signature. I placed it in front of my mother. He has this, I said. This proves premeditation. This proves it wasn't a mistake. It proves you planned to fake it. My mother stared at the text message, her own words mocking her from the page. She looked small, shrunken. The illusion of the perfect family that she had curated for decades was crumbling under the weight of a single printed screenshot. "What do you want?" my father asked. His voice was hoarse. "You came here with a folder. You have a plan. What do you want?" "I want to make a deal," I said. "Not a family deal, a legal one." "We don't have the money to pay you back," my father said. "I told you, it's gone." "Then you will find it," I said. "Take a loan, sell the truck, return the venue deposit. I don't care how you do it, but I want $9,500 returned to me. Not because I need the cash, but because that transaction needs to be reversed." "We can't get the deposit back," Brianna shouted. "It's non-refundable." "Then I guess you are starting your marriage $4,000 in the hole," I said. "Because if that money isn't in my account, I don't have any reason to stop the investigators from looking at your bank records." I stood up. I felt incredibly light. For years, I had walked into this house feeling heavy, burdened by their expectations, their criticisms, their demands. Now, the dynamic had flipped. I was the one with the leverage. "I am going back to the hotel," I said. "I am going to draft a document. It will state that you sold the vehicle without my permission, that you accept full financial liability for any damages caused by the car, and that you agree to repay the full value of the vehicle, plus my legal expenses." "You want us to sign a confession?" my father asked, aghast. "I want you to sign the truth," I said. "If you sign it, I will present it to the investigators as a voluntary admission to resolve a civil dispute. It might keep you out of criminal court. It will frame this as a domestic misunderstanding rather than an organized fraud ring. It gives you an off-ramp." "And if we don't sign," my mother whispered. I picked up the folder. I tapped the edge of it against the table. A sharp, rhythmic sound. "If you don't sign," I said, looking at each of them in turn, "then I simply hand over the text logs and the full timeline to Investigator Davison tomorrow morning, and I let the state decide who goes to prison." My father looked at the table. He looked old. The bully had been confronted, and he had no moves left. "You're hard, Penelope," he said. "I didn't think you had it in you." "You taught me to be responsible," I said. "I'm just taking responsibility for my own name. Since you wouldn't—" I turned and walked to the door. "Wait," my mother called out. When do we have to decide?" I opened the door. The night air was cool and clean. "I'll email the document in the morning," I said. "You have 24 hours to return the funds and sign the affidavit. After that, the folder speaks for itself." I walked out to my car. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry. I sat in the silence for a moment, watching the house. I saw the silhouette of my father put his head in his hands. I started the engine. The trap was set. Now, I just had to wait and see if they loved their freedom more than they loved their pride. The address for Pike Auto Exchange was on the outskirts of town, wedged between a gravel distribution center and a rusted-out self-storage facility. It was the kind of place you missed if you blinked, and avoided if you had any sense. I drove my rental car past the entrance twice, scouting the perimeter like I was casing a bank. The lot was gravel, surrounded by a chain-link fence topped with barbed wire that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 80s. A portable building sat in the center, masquerading as an office, with a banner that read, "We finance everyone, bad credit, no problem," flapping limply in the wind. It was Thursday morning. My ultimatum to my parents was ticking down, but I couldn't sit in the hotel room waiting for them to grow a conscience. I needed to see the belly of the beast. I parked the rental at a diner down the road and walked the quarter-mile back to the lot. I pulled my hair up into a messy bun, swapped my blazer for a nondescript hoodie I used for gym sessions, and put on a pair of oversized sunglasses. I wasn't Penelope the auditor today. I was just a woman looking for cheap wheels. I walked through the open gate. The inventory was a sad collection of high-mileage sedans and trucks that had clearly lived hard lives. I spotted a Nissan with a taped-up bumper and a Ford truck with mismatched doors. But I wasn't looking for those. I was scanning for a gray Honda Accord. It wasn't there. "Help you with something." I turned. A man had stepped out of the portable building. He was younger than I expected, maybe late 20s, wearing a polo shirt that was too tight across the shoulders and holding a vape pen. He wasn't Jared Pike. I had seen Pike's mugshot online during my research the night before. This was a grunt. "Yeah," I said, pitching my voice a little higher, a little less confident. "I'm looking for a commuter car. Something reliable. My cousin told me you guys had a gray Honda, said it was low miles." The guy took a drag of his vape and squinted at me. "Which cousin?" "Mike." I lied. Everyone has a cousin named Mike. "Right, Mike?" He didn't seem convinced, but he didn't seem to care enough to press it. "We had an Accord, gray 11, right?" "That sounds right," I said. "Is it still here?" "Nah, not on the lot," he said, kicking a piece of loose gravel. "It's out for service, getting a new alternator." "Oh," I said, feigning disappointment. "Can I see it when it gets back? I have cash." At the word cash, his posture straightened. "How much cash?" "Depends on the car," I said. "But I heard you guys were asking around 10 for it." He nodded, looking around the lot as if checking for eavesdroppers. "Yeah, that car is solid. Clean interior. Only thing is, the paperwork is still in processing. Title is taking a minute to clear." "Why?" I asked innocently. "Is there a lien on it?" "No, nothing like that," he said quickly. "Just the previous owner, old guy. He messed up the signature line on the release. We gotta get him back in to resign some stuff. Bureaucracy. You know?" My heart slammed against my ribs. Old guy. "An old guy?" I asked, trying to sound conversational. "That's usually good, right? Means he probably drove it slow." "Yeah, he was ancient," the employee laughed. "Named Gary, I think. Came in here acting like he was selling a Ferrari. Talked my boss's ear off about how he kept it garaged. But man, he couldn't fill out a form to save his life. That's why the title is hung up." I froze. There it was. Independent verification. My father hadn't just handed the keys to a middleman in his driveway. He had physically come to this lot. He had stood on this gravel, shaken hands with these sharks, and negotiated the sale of my property. The narrative he had spun the night before that Pike came over might have been true for the pickup, but my father had been here. He was an active participant. "So, if I wanted it," I said, forcing myself to stay in character, "when would it be ready?" "Hard to say," the guy said, checking his phone. "Boss is dealing with it. But hey, I got a Camry over here. Same price. Title is clean. You want to look at that?" "Maybe," I said. "Let me call Mike and ask what he thinks." I walked away, pretending to dial my phone. As I moved toward the gate, I passed a row of cars parked along the back fence. They didn't have price stickers. They didn't have plates. I slowed down, glancing into the windows. On the dashboard of a blue Chevy Malibu, I saw a paper taped to the inside of the windshield. It wasn't a price tag. It was a handwritten note, waiting on dupe title, no notary. I walked past a Ford Focus. Same thing. Title pending. POA issue. This wasn't just about my Honda. This was a business model. Pike Auto Exchange was buying cars that had title issues or creating title issues and floating them. They were likely selling the cars to desperate people on rent-to-own agreements before they even legally owned the vehicles themselves. They were taking down payments, letting people drive off in cars they couldn't register, and then repossessing them when the paperwork snag dragged on too long. It was a churn and burn operation, and my car was fuel for the fire. I got back to my rental car and locked the doors. I felt dirty. I grabbed my laptop from the passenger seat and tethered it to my phone's hotspot. I needed to see where my car had been advertised. If it wasn't on the lot, it was being marketed somewhere else. I opened Facebook again, but this time, I didn't search for Honda Accord in the marketplace. I searched for Jared Pike in local buy-sell trade groups. I found a post from 3 days ago in a group called Tri-State Cash Cars, 2011. Honda Accord. Runs mint, $1,500 down. You ride today. No credit check. DM for details. The photo was taken in a driveway I didn't recognize, but the car was mine. I recognized the small dent on the rear bumper where I had backed into a shopping cart 3 years ago. But then I scrolled down. I found another post from yesterday. Same car, different group, gray Honda, fast sale, mechanic special, parts are whole, $4,000 cash, no title. My stomach dropped. Parts are whole, no title. Pike knew the heat was on. The BMV investigation had spooked him. He wasn't trying to sell it to a driver anymore. He was trying to dump it. He was trying to chop it up or sell it to a scrapyard to destroy the evidence. If that car got crushed into a cube of steel, the physical proof of the condition and the VIN would disappear. I looked at the timestamps. The parts or whole post was made 4 hours after I had left the DMV investigation unit. Pike had realized the title was frozen and the game was up. He was liquidating the asset. I couldn't just wait for the BMV to do their slow bureaucratic dance. I needed to intervene. I took screenshots of everything, the employee's face from my memory, the title pending notes on the other cars, the Facebook posts. I compiled them into a new email to Investigator Davison. Subject urgent update. Case 8829. Evidence of disposal. Investigator Davison. I just visited Pike Auto Exchange. An employee confirmed that an older man named Gary brought the vehicle in initially. Furthermore, I have found online listings suggesting Pike is now attempting to scrap the vehicle or sell it without a title to destroy evidence. Please see attached screenshots. If that vehicle is destroyed, we lose the primary evidence of the condition and the plates. I hit send. I sat there for a moment, watching the entrance of the car lot. I saw a black pickup truck pull in. A man jumped out. He matched the mugshot of Jared Pike. He was yelling at the employee I had just spoken to. He was waving his arms. He looked panicked. Good. I put the car in reverse and backed out of the diner parking lot. As I drove back toward the hotel, my phone buzzed. It was my father. Gary James Pike just called me. He says there are people asking questions. He says you were at his lot. Are you insane? These are not people you mess with. Penelope. I didn't reply. Another text. Gary James. You are destroying this family. Your mother can't stop shaking. Brianna is threatening to call off the wedding because she's afraid the police will show up at the ceremony. Is this what you wanted? To humiliate us? I pulled over to the side of the road. I read the words again. Destroying this family. For 34 years, I had believed that the family was a structure that protected me. But reading those words, I realized the structure was built on a foundation of my silence. The moment I spoke, the moment I asserted my own existence as a legal and financial entity separate from them, the structure collapsed. They didn't want a daughter. They wanted a resource. They wanted a safety net that didn't complain when they cut holes in it. I typed a reply. I didn't send it to the group chat. I sent it only to my father. I am not destroying the family. I am preventing the family from dragging me down with it. You sold my car to a chop shop. Dad, you committed a felony. I am not the one who humiliated you. You did that when you decided my signature was yours to forge. I blocked him again. I arrived back at the hotel just as the sun was breaking through the clouds. It was a weak, watery light, but it felt clarifying. I walked into the lobby and saw a news report on the television behind the front desk. Local authorities investigating stolen vehicle ring in Cedar County. It was a ticker at the bottom of the screen. It wasn't a headline yet, but it was there. The ripples were spreading. I went up to my room. I had 24 hours left on the deadline I had given them. I checked my bank account. The balance was still the same. No deposit of $9,500. They were calling my bluff. They thought that because I was their daughter, because I had spent every Thanksgiving and Christmas at their table, because I had always been the good one, I wouldn't actually pull the trigger. They thought I would absorb the loss, pay the fines, and let the car disappear into a scrap heap just to keep the peace. They were wrong. I opened my laptop and pulled up the document I had drafted. The confession and release of liability. I added a new clause at the bottom. Item 4. In the event that the vehicle cannot be recovered due to disposal by the third-party buyer, Gary and Lynn James agree to indemnify Penelope James for the full replacement value of a comparable vehicle, estimated at $12,000. In addition to the original sale proceeds, I saved the file. I wasn't just looking for reimbursement anymore, I was looking for justice. And if justice meant watching my parents explain to a judge why they sold a car they didn't own to a man who was currently trying to shred it, then so be it. The good daughter didn't just die yesterday, she was buried, and the woman who stood over the grave was holding a subpoena. The deadline I had given my parents was expiring at 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon. At 3 o'clock, I sent a text message to the group chat. It was deliberately softer than my previous communications, a tactical retreat designed to lure them out of their bunker. I don't want to go to court. I have found a way to resolve this without the police getting involved in the family side of things. I have a specialist who can help us structure a private agreement so I can clear my name without implicating you. Meet me at the conference room of the Oakwood Library at 4:30. Just bring your IDs. It was the bait they needed. They were terrified of the police, but they were also arrogant enough to believe that I, their dutiful daughter, had found a loophole to save them. They interpreted specialist as some friend of Penny's who pushes paper. They were about to meet the real halcyon risk compliance. I arrived at the library early. I had reserved the private meeting room in the back, a quiet space usually used for literacy tutoring or HOA meetings. With me was Elias Thorne. Elias wasn't a lawyer, though he knew more law than most attorneys. He was a senior fraud examiner from my firm, a man who spent his days dissecting offshore shell companies and tracing embezzled pension funds. I had called him in as a personal favor, and when I showed him the James Option List folder, he had driven down from the city without hesitation. "You ready for this?" Elias asked, setting his briefcase on the table. He looked like a weary college professor tweed jacket, wire-rimmed glasses, but his eyes were sharks. "I'm ready," I said. "They think you're a notary or a paralegal. Let them think that." At 4:25, the door opened. My parents walked in first, followed by Brianna. They looked exhausted but relieved. My father was wearing his church shirt, a button-down that was slightly too tight at the neck, as if trying to project respectability. My mother was clutching her purse like a shield. Brianna looked bored, checking her watch, clearly annoyed that this was interrupting her Friday evening. "Penny," my mother said, rushing forward to hug me. I stepped back, and she stopped, her arms falling to her sides. "We're so glad you came to your senses. We knew you wouldn't do this to us." "Sit down," I said, gesturing to the chairs opposite Elias and me. "Who's this?" my father asked, eyeing Elias suspiciously. "Is this the lawyer?" "I am a certified fraud examiner," Elias said, his voice smooth and professional. "I specialize in asset recovery and document verification. Penelope asked me to audit the transaction trail regarding the Honda Accord to see if we can limit your exposure." "Limit our exposure," my father repeated, nodding sagely. "Good. That's good. See, I told you she'd handle it. It was just a misunderstanding with the paperwork." They sat down. The dynamic in the room shifted instantly. They felt safe. They thought they were in a safe harbor where we would brainstorm excuses to tell the DMV. "Before we draft the agreement," Elias said, opening a laptop, "we need to establish the sequence of events. To protect you, we need to know exactly what the state knows." "Okay," my dad said, relaxing into his chair. "Shoot." I slid a single sheet of paper across the table. It wasn't a legal document. It was a timeline, printed in landscape mode, with color-coded bars. "This is what the system sees," I said. My father looked down. September 15th. Mailing address for vehicle registration changed to PKO, Box 884, Lynn James, September 28th. Text message exchange between Lynn James and Jared Pike confirming signature can be handled. October 1st. Bill of sale submitted with forged signature. October 4th. Vehicle records toll violation in Pennsylvania. October 5th. Vehicle involved in hit and run in Columbus. October 27th vehicle evades police pursuit in Chillicothe. You see the problem, Elias asked gently. To an outsider, this doesn't look like a family sale. It looks like an organized ring. You changed the address to hide the notifications. You negotiated the forgery. You took the cash. And now the car is running from law enforcement. We didn't know he was going to run, my mother protested, her voice shrill. He seemed like such a nice young man. He is a known predatory lender with a record for title washing, Elias said. And by giving him the car without a clean title, you enabled him to put it on the road illegally. That makes you liable for every mile he drives. But we didn't mean to, Brianna interjected. God, why does everything have to be so serious? Can't we just say the car was stolen? If you say the car was stolen, I said, looking at my sister, then you have to explain why you have $9,500 in your bank account from the thief. That is called possession of criminal proceeds. It's a felony. Brianna went pale. So, here is the reality, I continued. I work in compliance. You guys always joked that I had a boring office job. You called me a glorified secretary, but this is what I do. I trace fraud. And right now, I am looking at 3 people who have committed textbook fraud against me. My father's face flushed a deep, angry red. We are not criminals. We are your parents. We were in a tight spot. Let's talk about that tight spot, Elias said. We ran a soft inquiry on the household finances. You aren't just in a tight spot. Gary, you are drowning. You have maxed out 3 credit cards in the last 6 months. The tight spot wasn't Brianna's wedding. It was a lifestyle you can't afford. How dare you, my father shouted, standing up. You have no right to look at my finances. Penelope has every right, Elias said calmly, not moving, because you stole her asset to pay your debts. That opens the door. We were going to pay her back, my mother sobbed. We just needed time. The commission check is coming next month. There is no commission check. Lynn, I said quietly. I called your office. Dad, you haven't closed a major deal in 6 months. You're on probation at the dealership. The silence that followed was absolute. My father slowly sank back into his chair. The secret he had been keeping, the reason for the desperation, the reason for the quick cash grab was out on the table. He looked deflated, a balloon with the air let out. So, I said, stop lying. Stop pretending this was about the wedding. You sold my car because you were broke. And you didn't ask me because you knew I would say no. Or worse, I would ask to see the books. I just wanted to give Brianna what she deserved, my father whispered. What I deserved, Brianna snapped. She turned on him, her eyes flashing. You told me you had the money saved. You told me the wedding fund was separate. You mean to tell me my deposit was paid with stolen car money? It was the only way? Well, my father pleaded. That is so gross, Brianna yelled. Do you know how embarrassing that is? If Jason finds out my parents are broke frauds, his family is going to look at me like I'm trash. Brianna, I cut in. Stop. No, she screamed. You guys are pathetic, and she pointed a manicured finger at me. You're enjoying this. You're loving seeing us squirm because you're jealous that I'm getting married and you're alone. I am not jealous, I said, my voice steady. I am the only reason you aren't currently being interviewed by a detective. I didn't even want the extra flowers, Brianna blurted out. I wanted to upgrade the bar package. I used the car money to get the premium liquor tier because Jason's friends are snobs, and because you. She glared at me with pure venom. You are always so cheap. You never chip in for anything fun. I figured you owed us. I owed you? I asked. Yes, you lived in the city, making city money. And we're stuck here struggling. Mom and Dad paid for your college housing, and you just took off. Selling that car was just leveling the playing field. I looked at Elias. He raised an eyebrow. The entitlement was staggering. They didn't see the theft as a crime. They saw it as a retroactive tax on my success. Okay, I said. Thank you for that clarity. Brianna, it confirms everything. I opened my laptop. I turned the screen around so they could see it. "This is my email inbox," I said. "At 2 o'clock today, I received a notification from the Ohio Bureau of Motor Vehicles. Case number 8829 is officially active. They have subpoenaed the records from Pike Auto Exchange. They are seizing his inventory." My father made a choking sound. "Wait," I said. "There is more. I sent Investigator Davison the photos I took at the lot yesterday, the ones showing Pike trying to scrap the cars. Davison is moving for an emergency injunction. The police are likely at Pike's lot right now." "Did you go to the police?" my mother whispered, horrified. "I went to the regulators," I said. "And because I did that, Pike is going to start talking. He is going to tell them exactly who gave him the keys. He is going to show them the texts. Mom. He is going to save his own skin by pointing the finger at the nice older couple who scammed him with a bad title." "We have to fix this," my father said, panic rising in his voice. "Penny, call them off. Tell them it was a mistake. Tell them you signed it. We can say you were drunk. We can say anything." "I will not perjure myself for you," I said. "I will not go to prison for you." "Then what do we do?" he begged. "What do you want?" "I told you what I want," I said. "I want the truth, in writing." Elias pulled a document from his briefcase. It was 3 pages long, stapled in the corner. "This is a confession of judgment and release of liability," Elias explained. "It states the following facts. 1. That Gary and Lynn James took possession of the vehicle without the owner's consent. 2. That they negotiated the sale with Jared Pike under false pretenses. 3. That they acknowledge Penelope James had no knowledge of the transaction. And 4. That they agreed to reimburse Penelope James the full sum of $9,500, plus legal fees, plus the replacement value of the vehicle if it is destroyed." "If we sign this," my father said, reading the document with trembling hands, "it's a confession. The police can use this." "The police already have the evidence to convict you," I said. "The texts, the PEO, box, the rejected application, they don't need this document to prove you did it, but—" I leaned in close. "If you sign this, I will submit it to the investigator as part of a family resolution. I will tell them that I am declining to press criminal charges for the theft. Provided this civil agreement is honored, it doesn't guarantee the state won't come after you for the forgery, but it takes the victim me out of the prosecutor's corner. It turns a slam-dunk theft case into a messy family dispute that they might not want to spend resources on." "And the money?" my mother asked weakly. "We don't have it." "Then you sell something," I said. "You sell the boat. You sell the second car. You return the premium liquor package. Brianna, I don't care. But the $9,500 hits my account by Monday morning, or I withdraw the offer and I cooperate fully with the prosecution." "You're blackmailing us," Brianna hissed. "No," Elias corrected her. "She is offering you a lifeboat. The ship has already hit the iceberg. You can get in the boat, or you can drown with the captain." My father looked at the document. He looked at me. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes. Not anger, not disappointment, pure, unadulterated fear of consequences. "If I sign this," he said, his voice shaking, "will you still come to the wedding?" I looked at him. I looked at the man who had gaslit me for 3 days, who had called me selfish, who had tried to steal my financial future to cover his own failures. "Let's focus on keeping you out of handcuffs first, Dad," I said. "We can talk about the guest list later." He picked up the pen. His hand shook so badly he could barely hold it. He signed. Then he passed it to my mother. She was crying silently, tears dripping onto the table, but she signed. Then I pushed the paper toward Brianna. "I don't have to sign this," she said, crossing her arms. "I didn't sell the car." "You admitted to using the proceeds," I said. "Item 7. Beneficiary of funds. Sign it, Brianna. Or do you want me to tell Jason where the whiskey money came from?" She snatched the pen. She scratched her signature onto the paper with such force that the tip tore through the page. "There," she spat. Are you happy? I'm not happy, I said, taking the document and handing it to Elias to notarize. Because yes, he was a notary too. I'm safe. That's all I wanted to be. I stood up. The money, Monday morning, 9 a.m. If it's 1 minute late, I send the unredacted file to Davison. You're cold, my mother whispered. I don't know who you are anymore. I'm the daughter you raised, I said. I'm reliable, I'm efficient, and I clean up messes. I'm just finally cleaning up my own. I walked out of the library conference room. Elias followed me. We didn't speak until we were in the parking lot. That was brutal, Elias said, unlocking his car. Effective, but brutal. They sold me out for a liquor upgrade, I said, staring at the gray sky. They didn't leave me a choice. So, what happens on Monday? Elias asked. Do you think they'll pay? My dad is terrified, I said. He'll sell the boat this weekend. He'll beg, borrow, or steal, hopefully not steal this time to get that money. He knows I'm not bluffing. And the car? The car is gone, I said. Pike probably crushed it last night, but with that affidavit, I'm clear. State Farm will drop the liability claim against me once they see the admission of unauthorized sale. The fines will be transferred to my parents or Pike. I'm out. You're out, Elias agreed. But you know you can't go back, right? That bridge isn't just burned, it's nuked. I looked back at the library entrance. I saw my family walking out. They were arguing. My father was gesturing wildly at Brianna. My mother was holding her head. They looked miserable. They looked toxic. I know, I said, but for the first time in 34 years, the fire isn't burning me. I got into my rental car. I had one more stop to make. The police station. Not to file charges against my parents, I would keep my word on that. For now, but to hand over the Jared Pike file to the detective handling the investigation, I was going to make sure that while my family might limp away with empty bank accounts, the man who ran the chop shop was going down. I was Penelope James. I was a senior analyst, and I had just closed the biggest case of my life. Monday morning arrived with the clinical precision of a scheduled execution. The sun was barely up when I sat at the small desk in my hotel room, the glow of my laptop screen illuminating the dark circles under my eyes. I had not slept well, but my mind was sharp, honed by the adrenaline of the endgame. At 8 o'clock, I logged into the secure portal for the Ohio Bureau of Motor Vehicles. I uploaded the final document to case number 8829, my sworn affidavit of non-consensual transfer. This wasn't the private confession my family had signed in the library. This was the state's version. It was a sterile, 2-page form where I checked a box that said, I did not authorize the sale of this vehicle, and I did not sign the title. I hit submit, almost immediately. I forwarded the confirmation receipt to Robert at State Farm. Robert, attached is the filing confirmation from the fraud unit. As of this moment, the state acknowledges that the vehicle title is contested and the transfer was fraudulent. Please initiate the separation of liability immediately. 20 minutes later, Robert called. His tone had shifted completely. He wasn't the aggressive adjuster threatening my assets anymore. He was an ally relieved to have a paper trail. We got it, Penelope, he said. With this affidavit and the open investigation number, we are placing your policy in a non-fault status pending the outcome. We're rejecting the claim from the Columbus hit and run on the grounds that the vehicle was not in your possession or control. The other driver's lawyers will have to go after the driver or the unverified owner, which looks like this Pike character. You're shielded for now. Thank you, Robert, I said. And the toll violations. Same thing, he said. Send that affidavit to the Turnpike Commission. They'll transfer the fines to the plate, not the account holder, until the ownership dispute is settled. You can breathe. I hung up. I could breathe. Yes, but the oxygen in the room felt thin. I had secured my perimeter, but the enemy was still inside the gates. My phone buzzed. It wasn't my parents. It was Investigator Davison from the BMV. Ms. James? His voice was gravelly. the sound of a man who had spent his morning dealing with liars. "We have your affidavit. It matches the preliminary findings, but we have a development." "Is it Pike?" I asked. "It is. We raided Pike Auto Exchange on Saturday, seized his computers and his hard files. He's singing like a bird to avoid a grand theft auto charge. He claims he bought the car in a legitimate private party transaction." "He's lying," I said. "He knew the title was bad. I saw the other cars on his lot." "He knew the paperwork was sloppy," Davison corrected, "but he claims he didn't know it was stolen. He says the sellers, an older couple, represented themselves as having full authority, and he gave us something interesting." "What?" "Security footage," Davison said. "Pike has cameras in his office, audio and video. We have a clear recording of the transaction on October 1st. My stomach tightened. And we need you to come down here to view it." Davison said, "We need a positive identification of the individuals in the video before we issue warrants for forgery." "Warrants," I repeated. The word hung in the air, heavy and metallic. "Forgery of a state document is a felony of the 5th degree in Ohio," Davison said flatly. "If the people in that video aren't you, and they signed your name, we are obligated to pursue it unless there is a compelling reason not to." "I'll be there in an hour," I said. I hung up. Then, I texted my father. "The BMV has security footage from Pike's office. They are asking me to come in and identify the suspects. The deadline for the wire transfer is in 30 minutes. If the money isn't there, I identify you, and I walk away." The response was immediate. My phone rang. It was my mother. "Penny, please," she sounded hysterical, her voice thick with tears. "We need to talk, not over text. Can you come by the house? Just for 5 minutes. We're trying to figure this out." "I am not coming to the house," I said. "I am going to the BMV. You have the routing number. Transfer the money." "We can't do the full amount today," she cried. "Dad tried to sell the boat yesterday, but the buyer backed out at the last second. We have $4,000 cash. Can we give you that now and pay the rest over the next 6 months? We can set up a payment plan. I promise. Sweetie, we'll pay you interest." "No payment plans," I said coldly. "You didn't ask for a payment plan when you sold my car. You took the cash up front. I want the same courtesy." "Penelope, be reasonable," my father's voice roared from the background, snatching the phone. "I have $4,000 in cash right here on the kitchen table. I'll bring it to you. Cash is better, right? No taxes, no paper trail." I closed my eyes. Even now, with the walls closing in, he was trying to work an angle. He wanted to give me cash, so there would be no bank record of him repaying a fraud debt, allowing him to maintain plausible deniability later. "I don't want under-the-table cash, Dad," I said. "I want a wire transfer or a cashier's check. I want a clean, traceable restitution payment." "Don't do this to us right before the wedding." Brianna's voice joined the chorus, shrill and panicked. "I can't believe you're being such a witch. It's just money. Why do you want to see Dad in handcuffs over a stupid car?" "I don't want to see him in handcuffs," I said. "That is why I gave you a way out. But you are playing games. You think because I'm your daughter, I'll blink." "We aren't playing games," my father shouted. "We are broke. Do you understand? The money is gone. The credit cards are maxed. We can't bleed a stone." "Then you better find a way to make the stone bleed," I said. "Because I am walking into the investigator's office in 45 minutes. If my account balance hasn't changed by the time I walk out, I am pointing at the screen and saying, 'That is Gary James.'" I hung up. I turned off my phone. I needed silence to prepare for what I was about to see. I drove to the Alum Creek Drive investigation unit. The sky was a flat, oppressive gray. When I walked into Davison's office, he didn't offer me coffee. He turned his monitor around. "Okay," Davison said. "This was recorded on October 1st at 10:14 a.m. Watch closely." He clicked play. The grainy black and white footage showed the interior of a cluttered office. Jared Pike sat behind a desk, smoking a cigarette. Across from him sat 2 people, my parents. They looked relaxed. My father was leaning back in his chair, laughing at something Pike said. My mother was nodding, holding her purse in her lap, the same purse she had clutched in the library on Friday. The audio was tinny but clear. Pike. All right, Gary. The car looks decent. But the title, you said the daughter, is in the city. Dad. Yeah, she's busy. High-powered job. She told me to just handle it. Get it out of the driveway, Dad, she said. She doesn't care about the paperwork. I felt a sharp pain in my chest. Hearing him lie was one thing. Hearing him mimic me, putting words in my mouth to sell me out, was another. Pike. I need a signature on the back, and the odometer statement, Dad. Not a problem, on the screen. My father reached for the pen. He didn't hesitate. He didn't look at my mother for reassurance. He leaned forward and signed the document with a flourish. Dad. There, Penelope James, just like she does it. Pike laughing. You got good penmanship. Gary. All right, $9,500. Cash. Pike opened a drawer and counted out a stack of bills. My father took the money. He didn't count it. He just shoved it into his jacket pocket. Dad. Pleasure doing business. You take care of her. It's a good car. Pike. Don't worry. I got a buyer lined up. Kid needs a runner. We'll get the title processed through my guy. The video ended. Davison paused the frame on my father's face as he pocketed the cash. He looked triumphant. He looked like a man who had just pulled off a great deal. Is that Gary James? Davison asked. I looked at the screen. I looked at the man who had raised me, the man who had taught me that integrity was the most important thing a person could have. Yes, I said softly. That is Gary James. And the woman, Lynn James. And did you, at any point, tell him to get it out of the driveway or give him permission to sign your name? No, I said. I did not, Davison nodded. Okay, that establishes the forgery, and since he accepted cash over $5,000 in a fraudulent transaction, we're looking at felony theft territory too. He looked at me, his expression softening slightly. Ms. James, I have to ask, do you want to press charges, or do you want the state to proceed on its own? What's the difference? I asked. If you press charges, it's a domestic theft case. We arrest him today. If you leave it to the state, we go after Pike for the title mill, and we include your parents as co-conspirators in his ring. They still get charged, but it takes longer. And if there was some kind of civil restitution, the prosecutor might be lenient on the jail time. They might settle for probation and a record. He was giving me the opening. He knew I was squeezing them. I need an hour, I said. I need to make one phone call. You have an hour, Davison said. But after that, I have to file the warrants. I walked out to the parking lot. I turned my phone back on. It exploded with notifications, 20 missed calls, texts begging, pleading, threatening. I called my father. He answered on the first ring. He sounded out of breath. Penny, where are you? I just watched the video, Dad, I said. My voice was eerily calm. I watched you sign my name. I watched you laugh while you did it. I heard you tell him I said to get it out of the driveway. Silence. A horrible, choking silence. It was just sales talk, he stammered. I had to sell the deal. You sold me, I said, for $9,500. I'm sorry, he whispered. It was the first time I had heard genuine fear in his voice. Penny, I am so sorry. I didn't think it would go this far. It went this far because you took it there, I said. Now, listen to me very carefully. Investigator Davison is drafting the warrants right now. He has the video. He doesn't need my testimony anymore. The state is ready to pick you up. Oh God, I heard my mother wailing in the background. Oh God, Gary. But, I said, I have one lever left to pull. If I tell Davison that we have reached a civil settlement, that full restitution has been made, and that I am requesting the state show leniency, he might downgrade the charges. He might keep you out of a cell tonight. We don't have the full amount, my father cried. I told you. Then you find it, I screamed, finally losing my composure. You have credit cards. You have a truck. You have a retirement account. You have a daughter getting married in 3 months who spent $4,000 of my money on liquor. Liquidate it. I don't care if you have to return Brianna's dress. I don't care if you have to sell your golf clubs. Get the money. We can't return the dress. It's altered, Brianna shouted from somewhere in the room. Then sell the ring, I yelled back. Do you people not understand? This is the nuclear option. The bomb has already dropped. I'm trying to pull you out of the rubble. My father was breathing hard. Okay, I have a stash. In the safe. It doesn't matter. It's 5,000. With the 4,000 on the table, that's 9. That's 9, I said. You need 500 more, and the fees. Call it 10,000 total to be safe. I have 500, Brianna said, her voice small and sullen. In my honeymoon fund. Good, I said. Go to the bank, right now. Get a cashier's check for $10,000 made out to Penelope James. Take a picture of it. Text it to me. Then overnight it to my lawyer's office. If I don't see that picture in 45 minutes, I tell Davison to proceed with the arrest. We're going, my father said. We're going now. And Dad? I said. Yeah. Don't ever tell me I'm selfish again. I am buying your freedom right now. And it is costing me a lot more than $10,000. I hung up. I sat in the car and watched the minutes tick by. 10, 20, 30. At 38 minutes, my phone buzzed. A picture. A hand my father's, recognizable by the wedding ring and the sunspots, holding a cashier's check from Chase Bank. Pay to the order of Penelope James. Amount $10,000. I looked at the image. It wasn't victory. It was just an ending. I walked back into the investigation unit. Davison looked up. Well? They have agreed to full restitution, I said. The funds have been secured. I am formally requesting that the state treat this as a civil resolution regarding the theft. Davison nodded slowly. And the forgery? That, I said, is between the state of Ohio and Gary James. I won't stand in your way, but I won't testify that he did it with malicious intent against me personally. I'll say he was a desperate man making a bad decision. Davison sighed and closed the file. Fair enough. We'll charge Pike with the heavy stuff. Your father, he'll probably get a summons for misdemeanor falsification, a fine, maybe community service, no jail time, if his record is clean. His record is clean, I said, until today. You're a tough lady, Ms. James, Davison said. I had to be, I said. My parents sold my car. I turned and walked out. The money was coming. My name was clear. The insurance was sorted. But as I walked to my rental car, I realized that while I had recovered the $9,500, I had lost something much more valuable. I had lost the ability to ever look at my father and see anything other than a man who would sell me for cash and laugh about it on camera. The check would clear. The relationship was bankrupt. The conference room at the Alum Creek Investigation Unit was windowless, painted a shade of institutional beige that seemed designed to suck the energy out of the room. It was Wednesday morning, 3 days after I had received the picture of the cashier's check. This was the final formality. This was the mediation hearing required to officially close case number 8829 and unfreeze my driving record. I sat at the long metal table. To my left sat Investigator Davison, looking like a referee who had seen too many fouls. Across from us sat my parents. My father, Gary, was wearing a suit that was 10 years out of style, his face gray and unshaven. My mother, Lynn, wore large sunglasses despite the fluorescent lighting, clutching a tissue in her hand. Brianna was not there. She had refused to come, claiming she had a cake tasting, though I suspected she simply didn't want to be in a room where her wedding budget was being discussed as criminal evidence. At the far end of the table sat a lawyer representing Pike Auto Exchange. Jared Pike was not present. He was currently being processed at the county jail on unrelated charges of grand theft and title washing, a direct result of the evidence I had provided. We are here to finalize the civil resolution regarding the 2011 Honda Accord, Davison began, his voice flat. We have 3 parties involved: the owner of record, Ms. Penelope James, the unauthorized sellers, Mr. and Mrs. James, and the third-party purchaser, representing Pike Auto Exchange. Pike's lawyer, a slick man with a shiny tie, spoke first. My client maintains that he purchased the vehicle in good faith, he said, smoothing his papers. He was presented with a vehicle, keys, and a seller who claimed to have authority. Mr. Pike is a victim of misrepresentation here. I didn't let him finish. I didn't yell. I simply opened my folder and slid a single piece of paper across the table. This is the rejection notice from the Title Bureau, I said. It is dated 10 days after the sale. It cites a signature mismatch. Your client, Mr. Pike, was notified of this rejection. Instead of returning the car or contacting the owner, he listed the vehicle for sale as parts only and attempted to scrub the VIN from his inventory. I looked the lawyer in the eye. That is not good faith, I said. That is destruction of evidence. The lawyer cleared his throat and looked down. He knew he had a losing hand. He was just there to minimize the damage to the dealership's license. Furthermore, I continued, turning to Investigator Davison, I am submitting the final proof of premeditation regarding the suppression of notices. I laid down the printout from the post office. This shows that the mailing address for the vehicle was changed to a P.O. box registered to Lynn James 2 weeks prior to the sale, I said. This proves that the sellers took active steps to hide the transaction from the owner, and Mr. Pike facilitated this by accepting a title he knew was not signed by the person standing in front of him. My mother let out a small, strangled sob. We just wanted to handle it, she whispered. We didn't want to hurt anyone. You hurt everyone, Mrs. James, Davison said, not unkindly, but firmly. You put an uninsured vehicle on the road, you enabled a known fraudster, and you compromised your daughter's legal standing. Davison then turned his laptop screen so everyone could see. He clicked a file. It was the video from Pike's office. My father flinched as if he had been struck. On the screen, the digital ghost of Gary James laughed, signed my name with a flourish, and pocketed the cash. Dad, there, Penelope James, just like she does it. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the silence of a lie being dismantled, bolt by bolt. My father couldn't look at the screen. He couldn't look at me. He stared at his hands, which were folded tightly on the table, the knuckles white. The state acknowledges that the signature is a forgery, Davison said. However, in light of the restitution agreement, we are prepared to accept the affidavit. He pushed a document toward my parents. This was it, the official state document. It wasn't the private agreement we had signed in the library. This was a sworn statement to the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. By signing this, Davison explained, you are admitting that you sold the vehicle without the permission of Penelope James. You are accepting full financial liability for the vehicle from the date of sale until the date of impound. You are also acknowledging that Ms. James is a victim of identity fraud in this matter. My father picked up the pen. His hand was shaking so badly he had to steady it with his other hand. Does this mean I go to jail? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. It means, Davison said, that the state is satisfied that the victim has been made whole financially. We will likely pursue misdemeanor charges for the falsification. Mr. James, you will pay a fine. You will likely do community service, but because your daughter has advocated for leniency, we are not pursuing the felony theft charge today. My father looked at me. His eyes were wet. Penny. Sign it, Dad, I said. My voice was steady, devoid of the anger that had fueled me for the last week. Now, there was only exhaustion. Sign it so I can go home, he signed. My mother signed underneath him. As the ink dried, I felt a physical weight lift off my chest. It was a sensation of lightness so profound I almost felt dizzy. Okay, Davison said, collecting the papers. Case closed on the title dispute. The vehicle has been located at a scrapyard in Chillicothe, partially dismantled. Pike's license is suspended pending the grand jury. Ms. James, you are free to go. I stood up. I checked my phone. I had a notification from my bank app. The $10,000 cashier's check had cleared yesterday. The money was safe. Then, a new email popped up. It was from Robert at State Farm. Subject claim 4922. Cleared Penelope. We received the affidavit from the BMV. The claim regarding the Columbus accident has been formally denied against your policy and redirected to the responsible parties. Your record is clean. No rate increase. Have a good weekend. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 7 days. It was over. The legal grenade had been defused. I gathered my folder. I didn't look at Pike's lawyer. I turned to leave. Penelope. My father's voice stopped me at the door. I turned around. He was standing up, looking smaller and older than I had ever seen him. The bluster was gone. The arrogance of the patriarch was gone. He was just a man who had been caught on tape selling his integrity for $9,500. Will you forgive us? He asked. The question hung in the air, heavy with the expectation of family duty. He wanted the Hollywood ending. He wanted me to hug him, to tell him that money was just money, that family was forever, that we would laugh about this at Brianna's wedding. He wanted the doormat to say it was okay to step on her one last time. I looked at my mother, who was watching me with hopeful, teary eyes. I looked at my father. I am not a judge, Dad, I said. I don't hand out sentences, and I don't hand out pardons. But we're family, my mother pleaded. We made a mistake. You didn't make a mistake, I said. You made a choice. You chose to value your comfort over my safety. You chose to lie to me every single day until I caught you. I tightened my grip on the folder handle. I am not a judge, I repeated. I am just a person who stopped being a rug. You can't trip over me anymore, and you can't wipe your feet on me anymore. Does that mean you aren't coming to the wedding? My father asked, his voice trembling. It means, I said, that I am going back to the city. I'm going to buy a condo. I am going to live my life, and for a while, I am going to do it without wondering if the people who are supposed to protect me are actually stealing from me. I opened the door. Goodbye, Dad. Goodbye, Mom. I walked out of the room before they could answer. I walked down the long linoleum hallway of the investigation unit, past the offices where people were chasing bad checks and stolen identities. I walked out into the cool, gray afternoon of Columbus, Ohio. The air smelled of rain and exhaust, but to me, it smelled like freedom. I took out my phone. I opened the family group chat. Penelope James left the conversation. Then I went to my contacts. I selected Dad, block caller. I selected Mom, block caller. I selected Brianna, block caller. I wasn't doing it to punish them. I was doing it to heal. I needed silence. I needed a perimeter where my signature belonged only to me, where my assets were safe, and where no was a complete sentence. I walked to my rental car. I didn't have my Honda anymore. It was a cube of crushed metal in a junkyard somewhere. But as I sat in the driver's seat, I realized something. The $9,500 wasn't the price of the car. It was the price of the lesson. They had sold my trust for cash, but in doing so, they had forced me to buy something much more valuable. They had forced me to buy my own independence. I started the engine. I put the car in drive. I merged onto the highway, heading north toward the city skyline that rose in the distance. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. There was nothing behind me that I needed to bring with me. I was Penelope James, and for the first time in my life, the title to my life was in my name, clear and free of liens. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It was a long journey for Penelope, but she finally found her voice. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening on your commute, at the gym, or maybe relaxing at home? Please leave a comment below letting me know your location and what you would have done in Penelope's shoes. And if you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to the channel Maya Revenge Stories. Hit that like button and smash the hype button to help this story reach more people who might need a little inspiration to stand up for themselves. See you in the next video.